The station always hummed before a diplomatic event, as if its metal bones sensed trouble coming. Elias Ward noticed it on his walk back from the cargo bath, a soft vibration in the deck plates. The lights flickering in colors no human would ever describe as comforting, and the way the air recyclers kept sighing like anxious waiters. He was halfway through mumbling to himself about overtime pay when someone stepped directly into his path and stopped him cold. Lyra Nesh didn't walk so much as glide. Her species moved with the unsettling elegance of someone who'd memorized gravity's weaknesses. Her tall frame cast a long shadow across the corridor, and the pale bioluminescent lines on her arms pulsed like steady heartbeats. Elias had seen her before, usually surrounded by small clusters of diplomats in training. She was always poised, always composed, always carrying datapads that screamed important from 30 paces. This was the first time she'd ever looked even slightly uncertain. She inhaled sharply, in a way that made the glowing lines on her throat shift. Elias Ward, I require your assistance. Elias blinked. Assistance? Me, I just load things. Big metal things. I'm not exactly on the diplomatic roster. That is precisely why you are the correct choice, she replied, as if that explained everything. It explained nothing. He glanced past her, checking whether someone else was supposed to be the target of this conversation. No such luck. The corridor was empty, the silence painfully deliberate. What did I do? He asked, already bracing for some accidental violation of 3 different interspecies etiquette rules. She folded her hands behind her back, something her species did when embarrassed, but trying to appear powerful. I require a partner. He waited, expecting more. When none came, he said, a partner for what? She hesitated for exactly the length of time. It takes a dehydrated diplomat to consider drinking out of a flower vase for the tri-spiral unity dance. Elias choked. The what? The diplomatic ritual performed at tonight's peace ceremony, she said, toned perfectly even as the markings across her collarbone flickered with nervous light. All trainees of my rank must dance with a chosen partner. I have no partner. He raised a slow hand. Okay, pause. Why me? There are literally hundreds of trained performers on this station. Dancers, professionals, people whose joints don't crack when they kneel. Her chin lifted in dignified suffering. The dance requires trust, synchronization, and high sensory awareness. Most people avoid partnering with trainees. They do not wish to be seen with someone inexperienced. Ah, Elias said softly. That hit different. So everyone said no. Not just no, she said stiffly. Some said absolutely not. One said rather leap into a star. Several fled. Elias winced. Diplomacy really does bring out the best in people. I am aware, she muttered.
For a moment, her composure cracked barely, but enough for him to see a small glimpse beneath it. Something vulnerable, something tired, something that made him straighten slightly, like his chest had been nudged. He exhaled. Look, I'm not exactly a dancer. You are human, she said firmly, as if that were a skill set all its own. You adapt. It is your species' most irritating quality. Irritating, and also admirable, she added quickly, as if the words escaped before she could stop them. A faint warmth crept up the back of Elias's neck. He rubbed his palms against his work pants. Look, I really don't want to accidentally break some sacred rule and trigger a war. You will not. She paused. That probably feels a little aggressive. It is the safest word I can offer. He groaned. She took a careful step closer. Elias, I would not ask if it were not important. The tri-spiral is a symbolic reaffirmation of interspecies cooperation. My house's honor depends on it. If I fail, my standing at the academy may be rescinded. The glow under her eyes dimmed in resignation. Okay, Elias murmured. Now we're getting somewhere. He looked at her, really looked, and suddenly the sterile corridor felt too small for the weight of the moment. She wasn't asking for help because it was convenient. She was asking because she was cornered in, because she trusted him, for reasons he didn't fully understand. He sighed. Fine, I'll help you. Her breath hitched just barely. You agree? I agree, he said, though I might regret it halfway through if this dance involves any acrobatics. Her eyes widened slightly, a glimmer of relief breaking through. You have made the correct decision. I will begin preparing the rehearsal room. Wait, what kind of preparations? She looked him dead in the eyes. We will need to practice the final gesture at least once. Final gesture. She nodded. Hay frowned. What is the final gesture? There was a long dead silent moment. Then, it is complicated. Complicated like paperwork complicated. Or complicated like don't tell the humans until it's too late complicated. Her markings brightened in a way he was pretty sure meant panic. I strongly suggest we leave that explanation until after you have mastered the initial movements. Elias stared at her. Lyra, what does the final gesture involve? Her voice dropped to a whisper, like a confessional. You must not fake the kiss. Ilias's heart stopped mid-beat. The what? She pressed 2 glowing fingers against her forehead in despair. Do not make me repeat it. It is mortifying. He opened and closed his mouth like an idiot fish. Are you saying the final step of a diplomatic dance is symbolic? She blurted. Purely symbolic. Entirely ritualistic. Only mildly intimate. Mildly, she straightened and smoothed her robes as if that could erase the entire conversation. You will handle it. Humans handle everything with absurd confidence. You're expecting me not to panic. Yes, you're expecting me not to mess it up. Yes, you're expecting me, he said weakly, not to fake a kiss. She looked at him with absolute, earnest seriousness. Elias Ward, if you fake it, 3 delegations will consider it a personal insult, and my house will be humiliated for generations. He rubbed his face with both hands. This is insane. It is diplomacy, she corrected. He sighed again, heavier, but a little smile tugged at his lips despite himself. Fine, teach me this dance before I ruin your career. Her shoulders dropped in relief. Thank you, truly. And for the first time, Elias thought he saw a spark behind her eyes, bright and warm and undeniably relieved. Something deeper than duty, something that made him wonder how many lines they were already crossing. Let's get started, he said, and the hum of the station shifted, as if very aware that whatever they were about to begin would change everything.
The first thing I learned about the Varathi Embassy dance hall was that it wasn't a dance hall at all. Not really. It was a repurposed diplomatic chamber. A room originally designed for tense treaty negotiations, strategic disputes, and silent glares across polished obsidian tables. Now those tables had been pushed aside and replaced with hovering, luminescent spheres that pulsed in patterns I was assured were music, though they sounded more like a starship experiencing mild gastrointestinal distress. Worse, the floor wasn't solid, it shifted underfoot to mimic dynamic terrain, supposedly to help dancers synchronize their movements. I suspected it was a ploy to test how many humans could maintain dignity while sliding unexpectedly toward a wall. Leora was already there, naturally composed, naturally graceful, and naturally annoyed in that quiet, dignified alien way that made her mandible plates tighten ever so slightly. On her people, that was the equivalent of a human rolling their eyes so hard they strained a muscle. She looked at me with that exact silent judgment as I skidded the last 2 meters across the floor and only avoided collision by colliding with her instead. If that was your entrance, she said, voice low, I fear for what your dancing will look like. I straightened myself with what I hoped was charm but probably looked more like a startled herbivore, pretending confidence. Humans call it improvisation, I said. Very advanced technique. You wouldn't understand. On the contrary, she replied, mandibles relaxing into a smirk. We have a similar technique. We call it tripping. And just like that, the dance started. If anyone tells you aliens are elegant by default, they haven't seen a Varathi ceremonial dance. Their movements are complex, mathematical, fluid in theory but terrifying when performed by actual living beings who expect their partners to know which angle corresponds to which. Emotional subtext and whether dipping downward signifies affection, gratitude, or an invitation to mutually assured destruction. The music spheres pulsed in strange harmonics, sending ripples across the terrain floor, and Leora moved with such precision that I couldn't tell whether she was following the rhythm or forcing it to obey her. I did what any reasonable human in a cross-species romantic tension scenario would do. I tried not to die left, she whispered. I stepped right, immediately sweeping her off balance. She caught herself with an annoyed flick of her lower arms. Do you not know your directions? I know them, I said. I just refuse to follow them unless they come with clear instructions and maybe a diagram. Your species evolved from stubbornness, and yours evolved from critiquing it. Her mandibles clicked in amusement. It was a sound I'd learned to interpret as her version of a laugh, sharp, soft, almost embarrassed that she had reacted at all. The fact she made that sound because of me sent something warm spiraling through my chest, though I pretended it was only the effort of not collapsing. We moved again, more carefully this time, her hands guiding my shoulders while I tried to mimic her steps. The shifting floor created little wave-like motions beneath us, pushing us in slow arcs toward the circle of ambassadors watching from the perimeter. They all pretended to be polite, but I could tell they were waiting for one of us to fall, preferably me. The council expects us to make a good impression, she murmured, suddenly serious. We must be coordinated, united, harmonious. I love that this dance doubles as diplomatic propaganda. All Varathi traditions do, and humans, I said. We just wing it and hope charisma is enough. Charisma cannot replace precision. It gets close, I said, sometimes dangerously close. Her grip tightened, subtle but noticeable. Try to focus. This next part requires alignment and trust. My brain, being human, immediately hyperfocused on the one word it shouldn't have, trust. Yes, she said unbothered, the dip of intent. If we do it correctly, the council will interpret it as a symbolic declaration of cooperative potential. If we do it incorrectly, they will interpret it as an insult. And what about us? I asked. The music shifted. She looked at me with eyes brighter than any star chart. If we do it correctly, you will not fall. If we do it incorrectly, you will strike your head on the floor. Great, I said. Great symbolism. Love it. She exhaled in the way her species used to hide emotion. I suspected she was amused, agno, frustrated, or worried. I never knew which. That was part of the problem that the moment came. The lights dimmed. The floor steadied. She stepped forward, mandibles close to my cheek, breath warm despite the cool temperature. Her upper hands lifted mine, her lower arms circled my back, and I felt that same electric tension, the kind that comes before a kiss, a confession, or a mutual mistake neither of you wants to admit wanting. "Do not lean too far," she whispered. "I'm trusting you. You shouldn't." That should have been a joke. It wasn't. Not fully. The dip happened. Or rather, she performed it flawlessly while I performed a passable imitation of a human coat rack being pushed over by a gentle breeze. She lowered me with impossible precision, her strength supporting all of my weight. Her face hovered only a breath above mine, eyes locked, mandibles parted, the slightest bit of earthy sign of emotional vulnerability. I forgot the ambassadors. I forgot the dance. I forgot the entire galaxy. She held me there. Too long, much too long. Long enough that the entire chamber understood we were no longer performing for diplomacy. Her voice dropped. "You are shaken, you're really close, and this troubles you." I didn't say that. The floor shifted again. I steadied my breath, or tried to. Her expression softened in a way that made my ribs feel too tight. Then someone in the audience coughed pointedly. She jerked upright. I stumbled, nearly falling again, and she caught me by the back of my jacket with an annoyed hiss. "Humans," she muttered. "You collapse like wet fabric. You held me too long." Her eyes widened slightly. It was necessary. For balance. It wasn't for balance. It wasn't. Her mandibles clicked. Betrayed embarrassment, a rare, precious detail she'd never admit to. "We should continue the dance," she said quickly. "Sure," I replied. "Unless I need to pretend I didn't almost kiss you." She froze. Absolutely froze. Then, with the dignity of a diplomat who had decided nothing had happened, she pulled me back into position. "We resume," she whispered, but her heartbeats were faster, and mine were worse. The audience hadn't missed a thing, and neither had we. If Section 2 had been about the dance, Section 3 was about the consequences of it, because nothing in the galaxy spreads faster than rumors, except maybe human embarrassment, and by the next cycle both had spread across the Virithi embassy like a wildfire, fueled by diplomatic gossip and poorly encoded translation filters. I was halfway through a nutritionally tragic breakfast ration when the first whisper reached me. It came from two junior attaches passing by the commissary alcove, pretending they weren't staring. "Is that the human who attempted an interspecies courtship gesture on the dance floor?" One of them murmured in Virathi clicks. The other replied, "Attempted." He completed it. With unnecessary enthusiasm. I nearly inhaled my synthetic eggs. Completed. Enthusiasm. I would have choked if the eggs had any actual structural integrity. When Leora entered the room moments later, every alien within 10 meters scattered like diplomats avoiding an open microphone. She acted like she didn't notice. But that was nonsense. Leora noticed everything. Her gait was a notch too stiff, her lower arms tucked a fraction closer to her torso, and her eyes kept performing those tiny recalibrations that told me she was preparing for confrontation. "You're late," she said. "You're early." "Incorrect. I am precisely on time. You are simply unprepared. For breakfast or for getting publicly roasted." "Both." She sat across from me, posture immaculate, mandibles slightly tighter than usual. Someone across the room snickered. Leora's eyes snapped toward the sound, and the snickerer immediately remembered they had somewhere else to be. "So," said, stabbing at something pretending to be fruit, "we're trending on 17 diplomatic communication networks," she replied, "and one cooking forum." "A cooking forum." They believed your dip resembled a historical courtship technique involving fermented root vegetables. "I don't want to know." Do not." The silence stretched. For a few seconds, one of those awkward, shimmering silences that felt like a drawn breath between two people pretending nothing had changed even though everything had. Finally, Leora clasped her upper hands together. "We should discuss last night, should we? It was a diplomatic exercise." "Sure, and any misinterpretations should be corrected immediately." "Absolutely." She exhaled, relieved. I wasn't, though I hid it behind another failed bite of breakfast. She interpreted my silence as agreement and straightened her posture, all confidence and composure again until her mandibles fluttered in that betraying, not quite steady way. But she said, I froze but there were deviations from the expected pattern, emotional ones. From your side or mine. Shu and Stooley could have placed the entire station's oxygen supply on the table, and the silence would have been heavier. "We will not clarify," she said, too quickly. "Okay," I said gently, "but maybe we should." Her mandibles clicked defensively. "If you insist on analyzing the situation, I insist on honesty," I said. The phrase hit her harder than any misstep on the dance floor. Virathi culture valued precision, discipline, and strategic emotional concealment. Honest to particularly emotional honesty was a battlefield they avoided with the same caution humans reserved for ex-partners holding power tools. Before she could respond, Ambassador Sitha approached our table. Leora straightened so sharply she might have injured herself. "Envoy Leora," Sitha said, voice cold enough to freeze plasma. "Human liaison." She didn't bother using my name. "Typica, you will join me in the negotiation chamber immediately." Leora stood. There is a matter requiring damage control, SCi-Fi interrupted. Your dance has been interpreted by the Yeltron delegation as a prelude to a bilateral romantic alliance. I blinked. The Yeltron. Why them? Because their species believes that any dip longer than 3 seconds signifies mating intentions, SCi-Fi said. Leora shot me a horrified look. How long was our dip? I winced. More than 3 seconds. More than 10, she hissed. 12, I admitted. The ambassador's mandibles snapped in disbelief. You have sparked diplomatic repercussions. There are rumors the two of you are entering a multi-dimensional partnership charter. I turned to Leora. Did we accidentally get engaged? Quiet, she whispered, mortified. SCi-Fi folded her arms. You will accompany me, both of you now. We followed her through the corridor like schoolchildren being marched to detention. Leora didn't look at me once. Though her arms brushed mine as we walked accidentally, I assumed, or hoped, or feared. Hard to tell. Inside the negotiation chamber, representatives from multiple species were already seated. I recognized several Yeltron with their crystalline masks, Goranth with their pulsating color-shift skin, and a few humans pretending they weren't entertained by the chaos. The moment Leora entered, the Yeltron envoy rose. We congratulate the pair on their union, he said, crystalline tones chiming. May your partnership be fruitful and diplomatically advantageous. I choked air. Leora made a sound like a dying translation node. SCi-Fi rubbed her temples. There is no union. The gesture was misinterpreted. The Yeltron envoy shimmered a doubtful shade. The dip of intent was extended. The human's gaze was receptive. The envoy's hold was intimate. I whispered to Leora. They noticed the lingering. Do not say that word, she muttered. SCi-Fi stepped forward. We will clarify this misunderstanding formally. The pair will perform the counter-dip to demonstrate lack of romantic intent. Leora stiffened. The counter. It is the traditional reversal gesture. It must be performed flawlessly. I leaned toward her. What does it involve? She swallowed once, mandibles tight, standing with backs turned, hands clearly away from each other, and stepping in opposite directions with perfect synchronization. That's it. If done improperly, she whispered. It implies rejection so severe it can trigger diplomatic hostility. I stared. So we can either accidentally get engaged again or accidentally start a war. Correct. Oh good, I said. No pressure. The entire chamber watched as we stepped into the center. Leora raised her chin, schooling every emotion off her face. I tried to do the same, but humans aren't built for masking. Our emotions leak out like faulty air seals. She murmured, no good. Neither am I. The music spheres activated. The diplomats leaned forward. I heard someone whisper, if they fail, we will need evacuation protocols. Leora exhaled slowly. Follow my lead. And just like that, the counter-dip began, the two of us moving together, then apart, tracing opposite arcs on the trembling floor. But halfway through the sequence, the terrain shifted. My foot slid. Leora moved to compensate. And for one split second, instead of stepping away from each other, we stepped toward each other. Every ambassador gasped. Every treaty trembled. And the galaxy discovered a brand new misunderstanding to add to its archives. We froze. Leora looked at me with horrified eyes. We just escalated the engagement, didn't we? She nodded numbly. Yes, she whispered. We very much did.
If Section 3 had ended with us accidentally escalating an interspecies engagement, Section 4 began with the collective diplomatic universe staring at us like we just announced a joint claim over a black hole and declared it our honeymoon destination. The room didn't move. The room didn't breathe. Even the ventilation paused out of respect, or shock. The Yeltron envoy rose first, crystalline facets chiming like wedding bells that absolutely no one ordered. The escalation is accepted, he intoned. We welcome the deepening of your commitment. Deepening? Leora whispered, eyes wide, posture flawless but trembling at the edges. No. No, no, no. Ambassador SCi-Fi closed her eyes as though begging the universe for a malfunction in the space-time continuum. Envoy Leora. Human liaison. A word. Now. She dragged us out of the chamber, claws clicking furiously on the polished floor. The moment the doors sealed behind us, she turned with the indescribable expression of someone who has passed through 6 emotional stages in 10 seconds and is rapidly approaching the 7th, diplomatic meltdown. Explain, she demanded. Leora spoke first, voice crackling with panic she desperately tried to hide. There was a misalignment in floor traction coefficient. She slipped, I said. Leora turned on me, mandibles snapping. You slipped. I recalibrated. SCi-Fi raised both arms sharply. The cause is irrelevant. What matters is this: you are now considered romantically bonded by no fewer than 4 species, one of whom controls the star lane tariffs for this sector. I blinked. So our dance changed galactic shipping prices? Yes, Sitha hissed. Congratulations. Your misstep has become economic policy. Leora covered her face with one pair of hands while the other pair folded in tight embarrassment. Ambassador, with respect, what are we supposed to do? You will negotiate, Sitha said. You will explain that the gesture was unintended but committed in sincerity. You will clarify that while you are not engaged, you are. She winced, exploring possibilities. I'm sorry, I said, rubbing my temples. Exploring what? Possibilities, Sitha repeated. Leora was pink around the eyelids. Varathi never blushed unless severely flustered or deeply emotionally compromised. And, Sitha added, you will do this together. If you contradict each other once, half the outer cluster will interpret it as heartbreak, betrayal, or warfare. Leora made a soft noise. We are doomed. You are representatives, Sitha corrected. Represent responsibly. She swept away before either of us could argue. Leora and I stood alone in the corridor, both silent, both stunned. The polished floor reflected two people who had absolutely no idea how to disentangle themselves from a diplomatic romance neither meant to start. Finally, she spoke. I apologize. My reaction earlier may have complicated things. Leora, everyone saw me fall into you. You didn't complicate anything. You stepped toward me. She muttered. You stepped toward me too. That was reflex. Your species is gravitationally unpredictable. We both stopped, both inhaling at the same time, both realizing we were arguing for no reason other than panic. She softened first. Her shoulders, all four arms, the rigid line of her back, everything dropped just a fraction. It is not that I object to the idea of you, she said quietly. Humans are chaotic, stubborn, emotionally volatile, dangerously earnest, but also courageous. And sometimes unexpectedly gentle. That was almost a compliment, I said. Her eyes flicked away. Do not push your luck. We started toward the next chamber, where the joint clarification meeting was scheduled. As we walked, the hallways buzzed with rumors. A Gorinth diplomat applauded politely as we passed. A pair of humans gave me a thumbs up like I'd scored a romantic victory instead of a galactic crisis. A feathered Tlyrite delegate whispered. They walk well together, as though judging a beauty parade. Leora muttered. I regret all that exists. When we entered the briefing room, 3 delegations were waiting, Yeltran, Gorinth, and a human representative who already looked exhausted. The Yeltran envoy rose with ceremonial calm. We welcome you, bonded potential pair. I raised a hand. Actually, Leora elbowed me. We are honored, she said with a robotic smile. The envoy shimmered. You will now present your clarification declaration. Leora leaned toward me. Follow my lead. And please do not fall. I cleared my throat. We would like to clarify that our interaction was not intended as a binding romantic contract. The Gorinth representative pulsed purple. But it was emotionally significant. Yes, Leora said. No, I said. We froze. Every gaze tightened. Leora inhaled slowly. What my partner? She blinked, horrified she had used the word. What the human means is that the moment was significant not because of contractual intent, but because of cultural mutual respect. The room exhaled. I nodded. Right. Mutual respect. And maybe a little panic. The Yeltran envoy chimed thoughtfully. So the bond is not established, but remains possible. Leora visibly wrestled with the concept. Yes. Potential remains. Pending future understanding. My heart did something inconvenient. The envoy bowed. Then the stars will wait. The meeting adjourned with surprising grace. No one declared war. No trade routes collapsed. No sudden marriage ceremonies were scheduled. When everyone had left, Leora sagged against the wall, all elegance evaporating. It is over, she whispered. Finally. Not entirely, I said, approaching her. We still have the potential thing. She groaned. I spoke without thinking. It's fine, I said. For the record, I don't mind the idea. She stilled. Every part of her froze like a paused video frame. Her voice, when it came, was barely audible. Humans always say things like that. Casual. Careless. As though affection is as easy as breathing. For us, I said gently, it is. She looked up at me, eyes full of complicated data she hadn't processed yet. My species calculates affection. Studies it. Tests it. You feel it. Yeah, I said. We do. Her breathing hitched. That is terrifying. Yeah, I said again. It usually is. We stood there in the empty room, two people who had accidentally shaken the diplomatic order of 5-star systems. And for the first time, the silence between us wasn't awkward. It was warm. Soft. Potential. Finally, Liara stepped closer, not enough for scandal, just enough for honesty. Human, she murmured. If we are to deal with the consequences of this, maybe it would be wise to explore them intentionally. My throat tightened. Are you saying? She nudged my arm with hers. Do not make me say it twice. I laughed softly. Okay. Then, where do we start? She tilted her head, eyes bright. With a dance we choose on purpose. And for once, no one in the galaxy misunderstood a thing.